There are only two ways to make money. You either create value or you print money to steal value from everyone else. In this episode, I'm joined by Alin Armstrong, aka Pastor Coin, to discuss why our modern money system isn't just broken, it's built on a lie. We explore why printing money is actually a spiritual violation of your time and energy, and why holding Bitcoin is the only way to align yourself with the truth. And we also ask the most dangerous question: if the government is stealing from you through inflation because they are creating more money, do you morally owe them taxes if they can infinitely create money? Let's dive in. Alin Armstrong, Pastor Coin, welcome to Bitcoin for Millennials.
Glad to be here as a millennial myself.
I was thinking to kind of start with what might be a very big topic to start with, but yeah, kind of like the nature of creation. So you've also written a book, and you distinguish between divine fiat, so creating reality from nothing, and carnal fiat, governments printing money. And for someone who is spiritual but not religious, so me, this sounds kind of like a violation of natural law. I think this is also what kind of like comes up when people talk about fiat money, right? Like you're just creating energy from nothing. So why is printing money a spiritual corruption, not just a flawed financial or economic approach or ideology?
Yeah. Okay, so this is the big one. So theologically, in terms of how I think, which is I try my best to think biblically and get my worldview and ideologies from the Bible. And so that's why I've categorized divine and carnal fiat, right? And this isn't how I've always seen things. But ever since, I've studied Bitcoin and gone down the rabbit hole, I've seen the Bible and kind of from a different perspective, and new things are being are coming to me, and I'm seeing new revelations in the Bible. I mean, it was always there, but as you know, when you get into Bitcoin, you go down that rabbit hole, it's like the whole world starts to look different, although it was always like that, right? But you're seeing new things. And so the Bible says that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right? Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that passage. And if you only read the English Bible, you would only know what it says in English. But in Latin, when it was translated from Hebrew to Latin, the word fiat was used to translate "let there be." So when God says, "Let there be light," "let there be an expanse in the heavens," and "let there be, fish," and so forth, beasts on the earth. That phrase, "let there be," is a Latin word, fiat, and it denotes, it's not just like creation from nothing, right? That's not just what it means. It's a better understanding of the word fiat, at least in the context of Genesis chapter 1, is a royal decree. God is like a king, and he's setting up his kingdom, so to speak, and he's making royal, authoritative decrees. Let there be light, let there be this, let there be that, and it happens, right? So it's almost as if creation are his subjects, and God is ordering them. You go here, you do this, so on and so forth. And so you get this picture of this God that is timeless, spaceless, immaterial, because he creates time, space, and place. So therefore, he's outside of that. And he's creating time, space, and place with his fiat, with his divine, authoritative royal decree. And so he makes this time, space, and place, and then he makes us humans, and it says that he made us in his image. So it says that God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let him have dominion over the fish of the sea and the birds of the heavens, and let him be fruitful and multiply and subdue it. So what's happening here is God is putting us in his time, space, and place, and he's saying You are my image. You are to represent me and do what I do. We now are bound by the laws of time, space, and place. We can't take time back. We only have so much space and place. These are bounds, right, on us. We are not God. We can't just create more time, space, and place. And so he says, be fruitful, multiply, have dominion of this creation I made. Therefore, we have to operate under the rules that God has made. One rule is, or rather, maybe a better way to put it is law, sowing and reaping, right? We have to sow in order to reap. This is just the basic facts of life. You cannot decree a garden, right? You can't go into your garden, let there be tomatoes, let there be, whatever you want, cucumbers and so forth. What you have to do is you have to plant the seed, cultivate it, water it, look after it, make sure the squirrels and the other, pests aren't coming to eat. Like I have a strawberry patch in my backyard here, and, my number one nemesis is the squirrels, because they love to come and steal the strawberries. And so there's all these variables, but there's work, there's sowing, and then there's reaping. Fiat money violates this law. Fiat money is men attempting to put themselves in the place of God and decreeing real value into existence. Fiat money is central banks saying, let there be money. And that's not how money's ever worked in history. Money is a product of the free market. Human beings made in God's image choose what they want to use for money. It's not decreed upon them. And for a long time it was gold. Humans just chose gold. It was just what we chose, is what we like best. And so when money's decreed from on high, it's a twisting of God's image in us, in that we try. It's the original problem, right? From Genesis 3. The serpent comes to Eve. What does he say to her? He says, did God really say you can't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? Did he really say? Oh, no, we can eat of every tree, just not that one. And he says, no, you're misunderstood. God knows when you eat, you'll be like God, knowing good and evil. And so this is the same temptation. It's, oh no, printing money is not a big deal, because when you print money and you control the money, you become like God in a sense, in that you can control everything else. So it's the same temptation. No, it's okay. Let there be money. It's fine. No problem. So this is sort of the paradigm I view it in.
When it comes to holding Bitcoin securely, peace of mind starts with architecture. On-Ramp's multi-institution custody model distributes control access across 3 independent regulated key holders in a 2 of 3 multi-sig quorum. No single point of failure, no pooled or omnibus exposure, just segregated client-titled vaults. You retain full legal ownership while On-Ramp coordinates security, compliance, and operational workflows behind the scenes. Multi-institution custody is the foundation for everything that On-Ramp builds. Sound infrastructure that distributes counterparty risk and provides fault-tolerant resilience with clear audits and institutional controls. And now On-Ramp is piloting flat, predictable pricing to make best-in-class Bitcoin custody and financial products more accessible than ever. Visit onrampbitcoin.com to learn more and sign up with code BRAM, that's BRAM, to receive $150 in Bitcoin after your first deposit. On-Ramp, strength in many, simplicity in one. My American friends, I've got something for you. If you're into Bitcoin, you want to grow your stack in any way possible. What if you could do it effortlessly just by spending your fiat? The Gemini Bitcoin credit card is designed to help you do just that, by giving you instant Bitcoin rewards on every purchase. Just use it like any other credit card and earn back up to 4% on transportation, 3% on dining, 2% on groceries, and 1% on everything else. There are no annual fees for this card and no exchange fees to receive your Bitcoin rewards. Sign up to get your limited edition Bitcoin Orange credit card and earn a $200 Bitcoin bonus when you spend $3,000 in the first 90 days. You can find more information and terms in the description below, or go to gemini.com/Bram to sign up today and start stacking effortlessly. That's gemini.com/Bram. Yeah, very, very interesting. I think the creation without the work, I find a fascinating thought, right? And when you make that practical, this is something I talked about a few episodes back. It's like, when you just create fiat money, you basically create productivity to use on the people that are unaware that you created this from nothing, right? So if you just hold it in front of them and say, look, I have this money, you go work for this money I created, you're basically abusing what we just referred to, and what you just referred to is just basically the law of nature, of the universe, or of the divine, right? You're trying to circumvent what you should do in order to create, by playing as some sort of substitute. Yeah, I find that super, super interesting. And so when we connect that to the spiritual corruption, would you agree that then is because the people that receive the reward that is just printed by other people don't get a reward that actually properly represents the work they put in? Does that make sense? So maybe in the beginning people don't really realize that, but I mean, now in 2025 slowly more people are realizing that. Would you say that is connected to the spiritual corruption, the fact that it's not an honest exchange in that sense?
Yeah, so there are corrupting characteristics when fiat money is used, and these are, I thought about this, and it's tough because you can't really blame the people, right? Most people, they just are trying to make a living. They're just trying to do what's right, and they're, for their families and so forth. Yeah. And so it's really hard for them to step out of that and evaluate what's really going on under the hood of the money system. But despite that, the reality still remains that if you use corrupt money, maybe it won't corrupt you as much as somebody else or something, but the broad reaching effects can't be stopped. I like to say that when you debase the money, you debase the man. And for most people, they feel that now, because what are you but your time? Time is really the only asset you have. It's your most scarce asset. You have a certain amount of time, and that's it. You really can't take it back. You can't save it to spend it another day. And so when you work for something, when you spend your time or invest your time doing something, you expect a certain return on that. You expect, okay, if I spend 40 hours of my week doing X, Y, or Z, I expect that I'll be able to eat, have a house, maybe my children will have clothes. You have certain expectations. But as time goes on, that 40 hours is getting you less and less and less and less. And those expectations get lower and lower and lower. In my own country, in Canada, we have politicians now who are saying, "Oh yeah, we know inflation is bad and cost of living is going up and it's hard for everyone. But there's things you can do. You can cancel your Disney Plus. You can, maybe don't go out to eat as much, budget a bit." So the solution from those on high who are decreeing money, that are debasing your time, the solution is just live worse. Work more and live worse.
Well, after you were kind of seduced or incentivized to upgrade your life through having Disney Plus or whatever, right? So it's like on the one side, they are promoting you to do that, while on the other side, when you ask for how do I fix this, it's downgrade again, right? It's not me, it's you.
Yeah. And so you start to feel the debasement, right? It's like, well, wait a minute, this isn't what I expected. This isn't what I've been working for. I can't outsave inflation. I can't outpace inflation. And so then people start to do things they wouldn't do out of necessity. And the debasement starts to affect you in other ways and affect society in other ways. Because when you discount the future, then you discount the present, and you start to make decisions that aren't forward thinking, because why would you think about tomorrow? It doesn't make sense. I have a friend from Argentina, and he said when he was living there, his parents would tell him stories when he was younger about how people would, and it might still be like that there, I'm not exactly sure, but they would tell him stories about how people would get their pay and then they'd go spend it immediately, the whole thing, because it would literally lose value that quickly. You would go into a restaurant and you would prepay for your drinks, because by the end of your meal, your drinks will be more expensive. So when you debase the money, you debase the man, and we see this all around us. It's unless you're plugging your ears and closing your eyes, I'm not sure how you miss it.
Yeah. So of course, you and I have found Bitcoin, and we agree, or basically everyone who adopts Bitcoin agrees, that the ledger, basically the immutable ledger, basically serves as a layer of truth, right? Like that is also what connects us in a decentralized way, is the fact that we all acknowledge that no one can change that, and therefore everyone also accepts the same state of that immutable truth at the same time, if we look at it at the same time, right? In 2025, I think there's kind of like a post-truth world, right? Like facts don't really matter and stuff like that. If we can go back to anchoring an economy on an objective truth, secured with proof of work, how can that change the spirituality that we are just talking about, that is broken now? What does that introduce? Where does that take us back to, I would say?
Yeah, I think if it's true that you debase the money, you debase the man, then it's also true in the reverse. If you have sound money, then you'll have sound people. Now, I don't say that to suggest that sound money will fix every problem in the world. I don't think it will. People will still be crooked and corrupt and things like that. But what it will do is align people's incentives in a way that is more moral and conducive to human flourishing. So in the sound money world, where we have honest money, the paradox is that I will end up trusting you more if I don't have to trust you, right? If I don't have to trust in your honesty, if the system of money is built in such a way like Bitcoin is, where it's trustless, then that trustless protocol actually elevates trust in society. Because now I can't, defraud you. I can't counterfeit Bitcoin. It just won't work. It's impossible. Yeah. And so that creates a more trusting society. And with a more trusting society, you have lots of different side benefits of that. People will generally be more happy. They'll be more productive. The incentive will be the incentive will now be, how can I add value to your life, and not how can I, leverage this immoral system in order to fleece you. Yeah. And so that has far-reaching implications into everything, from the family to education to healthcare, you name it. That's going to have a trickle effect into the whole of the human race.
I think we have a good opportunity to kind of like zoom in on that trustlessness part. And like you said, there will always be people that, you know, are greedy or will steal or will try to bamboozle you, etc. If people in a value exchange by, you know, expending their time and energy, their finite time and energy, right? Their finite life time and finite life energy. When you expend it, it's gone. When you exchange that for something that another person know better than you create infinitely, that's probably the dumbest thing that, you know, the dumbest exchange or the trade that you can do in your life. And so if money is stored time and energy, then inflation is the theft of that life. And so if we go further on that thought, is the Federal Reserve then, in your view, actively breaking the "you shall not steal" commandment?
Yeah, that's the whole. I mean, that's the whole game, right? It's God's monetary. In my book, there's a chapter called God's Monetary Policy, and you'd think it'd be a long chapter, but it's really not, because it's simple. You shall not steal. That is God's monetary policy. You shall not steal. Now, you can express that in different ways, and the Bible does express it in different ways, such as, you know, you shall use a just weight and measure, and it uses this kind of language as well. But at the end of the day, saying you shall use a just weight and measure and you shall not steal, you're saying the same thing. What God is saying is you have to use a money that's fair and just and equal, so that each human being is rewarded for their effort, for their time and energy expended in a just way. Because the mandate in the beginning was be fruitful and multiply. Right? That's what God said. He said, be fruitful and multiply. Okay, well, let's think through that. What does that imply? Well, it implies families, and it implies more people. And the more people you have, the more complexity you have. Because each person is an individual. Each person has different needs, wants, preferences, and so forth. And so when you get more people, you get more complexity. With more complexity, you need more tools. If we want to scale our mandate to be fruitful and multiply, we need an intermediary tool. That's money. Money serves as a tool between me and you so that we can communicate not in language with words, but language of value. I give you value, you give me value. How do we communicate that? With money. It's the tool in the middle. And so with money, we now have the ability to scale humanity. And when the Federal Reserve comes and starts to steal or manipulate that tool, then yeah, it's theft. And it is it's not just a violation of you shall not steal, but like I said earlier, it's a violation of our very identity. It's a violation of who we are, because we were made in the image of God to be productive. We were created to create. And so God comes and says, if you want this to work, if you want to live in peace, and if you want to have prosperity, and if you want to progress, you cannot steal. Not because it's not nice, but because if theft becomes the standard, then the whole thing falls apart and you have chaos. And that's exactly what we see today.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's no incentive to create then, right? There's only an incentive to steal, and therefore, like, nothing is created then anymore. Like that incentive disappears. I think this also came from your book. This is something I heard sometime in my life, but when we say inflation is theft, a lot of people also say taxation is theft, right? Like, why would you pay taxes to your government that can create your currency infinitely? Like, that isn't a logical thing to do. And this old saying is, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God's. And that means to fulfill your duties to the earthly governments, like paying taxes, while recognizing God's ultimate authority and giving him spiritual devotion. And I think in modern times, you know, when you end up in these discussions, this phrase, you know, people don't say it exactly like render unto Caesar well, the Caesars, but they say like, well, but if you pay taxes, you know, the roads are being made and all these things, right? So this is something that you should do. That's basically the counter argument to starting to talk about how taxation is theft, because rationally it doesn't make sense if they can just create the units of money, right? So people use that to shut down that debate. But you argue that that is kind of a trap. Can you maybe unpack why that is? Like, I have my own idea, but I really wonder what you think.
Yeah, so I wrestled with this question of taxation for a while, because that passage is in the Bible, right? Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. And there's other passages that talk about pay what you owe, taxes to whom taxes are owed, and so forth. And I remember reading these and going, man, like, how does this fit? Because it seems pretty clear cut, pay taxes, but then there's other passages in the Bible that imply another thing. There's other passages, such as in Judges, where you see Gideon hiding his wealth, his wheat at the time, from the Midianites. And so the Midianites were the rulers. And so what's Gideon doing? He's evading taxes. He's hiding his wealth from the rulers. And so on one page, the Bible seems to commend that, and on the other, it's telling you to pay. So is this a contradiction? And I had to deal with that. And what I discovered was the solution was kind of staring me in the face the whole time. And it was pretty obvious throughout the Bible. If you read the Bible from front to back, you see themes. And one of the major themes is God being rejected by man, and God continually reaching out to man and saying, come to me and I'll give you peace. But what happens is, so in the beginning, Adam and Eve, they reject God as king, they disobey. Then we have other stories, such as the Tower of Babel, where the human beings are again trying to be God, trying to reach God, and rejecting God. So God scatters them throughout the earth. And what we see is when man rejects God, what ends up happening is they put other men as king. So you have two choices: God is king or man is king. This is sort of the Bible's story. Who are you going to choose, man or God? Man's ways or God's ways? And so you get to the story in 1 Samuel chapter 8 of the Israelites, and up to this point, God has saved them from Egypt, brought them into the land, and, the whole Exodus and things like that. And God has been their king for a while. But the people come to Samuel the prophet and they say, we want a king. We want a human king like all the other nations. And Samuel says, why? You have God as king. Like, why would you have it made? This is great. So Samuel goes to the Lord and he says, your people want a king. And he says, give them a king. Give them what they ask. But first warn them. Warn them what this king will be like. And he lists all these things, what he's going to do. The king is going to conscript your sons for war. He's going to enslave your sons, your daughters. He's going to send your sons in front of his chariot so that they get shot with arrows before he does. And you know what the final warning was? It was taxes. He says, if you put a king over you, he will tax you. So Samuel goes to the people and says, all right, guys, I've talked with God, and here's what he says. Boom, boom, boom. He'll tax you. That was the final warning. And the people say, oh, it's fine. We want a king. Give us a king anyways. And so when you fast forward to the New Testament and you see Jesus talking with the Israelites, is it lawful for us to pay taxes? Could you imagine the audacity? What do you mean? You chose this.
Mm-hmm.
You had God as king. You had no taxes. And now you're wondering if it's lawful? So the reason Jesus says, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, is because he's essentially telling them, this is what you asked for. Of course, pay taxes. You chose this. But if you want to get out of that agreement, then render to God what is God's. That's how he ends it. He says, render to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. And
so you realize again that you don't need a human king.
Well, no. God, I mean, you can, like, this isn't to say you don't need human governance. Human governance is important, but you don't need supreme human governance.
Yeah.
And Jesus is saying you pay taxes to Caesar, not because it's good or moral, but because you chose this. This was your doing.
So if we continue on the taxation is theft concept, if I work for money and the labor is my time given by God or nature through my physical existence, at what point does the taxation become theft?
Yeah, well, the way I see it is like this. Human governance doesn't require taxation. I believe if there's a society that understands these principles, and like I'm aware this really only works in a Christian society, because outside of a Christian society, I can't really speak too much about that. But in a Christian society, I think when you understand these biblical principles, it's you pay for what's owed. So, for example, people always ask, well, if we don't have taxes, how are we going to have roads, right? So if you like roads, well, what are you going to do? You're going to pay for roads, right? Or you're going to build it yourself. Do you like healthcare? Then you're going to pay. Do you like having fire department? Like, people will pay for these things without being forced because they want these services. I want garbage pickup. I want roads. I want a fire department to come to my house and rescue me. I want ambulances. I want these things, so I will pay. And you know what will end up happening is, if people are voluntarily pay for these services, one, you're going to have competition, which is going to bring the price down. And two, you're going to get better service. So the world without taxation, the world of voluntary exchange, actually ends up costing you less and getting you more. So to me, it just seems like a no-brainer.
Right now, through 2025, Blockstream is running their biggest sale yet. 21% off the Blockstream Jade Plus right in their store, and your price is adjusted at checkout. This is the lowest price you'll see all year on the most trusted Bitcoin-only hardware wallet on the planet. The Blockstream Jade Plus is the simplest, most secure way to protect your Bitcoin. With a sleek design, full color display, and a dead simple setup, you'll be securing your sats in minutes. And pair it with their Blockstream app for the smoothest onboarding, offering advanced features like air-gapped setup, QR mode, and native multi-sig support as your stack grows. Go to store.blockstream.com, where the 21% discount is active through December 31st. And if you use my code BRAM, that's BRAM, you get an extra 10% off your order. Let's talk about something that not a lot of people think about before it's too late. Where are you storing your Bitcoin seed words? Are they truly secure? I found my solution with StampSeed. It's an elegant all-in-one titanium plate solution with no separate pieces to lose or manage. Your seed phrase gets permanently stamped into pure titanium that withstands fire, survives water, and lasts for generations. Unlike shallow etching methods, StampSeed's patented tools help you to deeply stamp every letter for permanent readability, protecting your financial legacy. When you order a titanium seed plate from StampSeed, you can also upload a custom design or your logo to customize the back of your plate to make it fully personalized. Paper seed phrases are a disaster waiting to happen. Secure your Bitcoin with StampSeed for decades to come. Visit stampseed.com and use code BRAM, that's BRAM, to get 15% off your order. I also wanted to talk about usury, because the church used to condemn usury, right? So that is interest, charging interest. Now the whole world runs on debt and interest. That is what eventually also creates the incentives for, kicking the can down the road as long as possible, not letting, nature take its course, have like just organic booms and busts, etc. Do you view the credit card system, the mortgage system, as a form of like modern slavery? That's kind of how they talked about when they talked about usury, right? It's like, you create this unequal relationship between two parties. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, because, well, usually when people hear the word slavery, they turn off or whatnot. But I do think it is a good word for this kind of like distorted relationship that's being created by the use of interest. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so that's the word the Bible uses, right? Slavery. And you read through the Proverbs and different parts of the Bible, and it'll talk about taking on debt, and the borrower. It literally says the borrower is a slave to the lender. That's literally a Bible verse in the Proverbs. The borrower is the slave of the lender. And so this is ancient wisdom, biblical wisdom. Just seems like common sense, right? But we live in a time now where interest and borrowing and debt is the entire monetary network. It's the entire system. Fiat money is debt. The whole thing is debt. I remember telling a guy in my church many years ago, as I went down the rabbit hole, I said, man, from my research, it looks like every dollar is debt. And he got really offended and mad at me when I said that. He said, well, no, the money in my bank, I have no debt. I'm like, no, but that is
on the note.
Right? It's still debt. It's maybe you're not indebted, but someone's indebted due to that. There's a debt, and there's a societal debt, right? There's a national debt. It's all debt. And so when I realized that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is bad, because I'm reading in my Bible, the borrower is the slave of the lender. I'm looking at the national debt. I'm looking at the monetary network and system, how it works, and it's the opposite. Everything the Bible warns against in terms of debt, this system exemplifies. So what do I do? I was stuck, because now I'm going, well, how do I live as a Christian who believes the Bible? How do I live in a monetary system that is debt based? And I was not tormented by it, but I was like distressed, because I didn't know what to do. Like, well, what do? Do you go live in a cabin and hut your food, and do you totally get out of society? That's probably not the answer. So what do I do? And then I found Bitcoin, and I was like, oh, this is it. This is the opt out. This is the system that is compliant with the Bible in terms of its rules. Everything the Bible says the money should be, Bitcoin is. And everything the Bible says the money shouldn't be, Bitcoin is not. And so at that point, I was like, well, because, and I tell people, I'm a Bitcoiner because I'm a Christian, right? So my Christianity, once I understood Bitcoin, it was my Christianity, my Christian worldview, which told me, you have to adopt this. I kind of had no choice. And so I said, okay, well, this fits the Bible. This fits what Jesus says. So I'm going to go with it. That was really my rationale. That was how my thinking about Bitcoin was. It wasn't really an orange pill so much as it was, well, this is my Christian worldview. This is Bitcoin. It fits. I'm going to go with it. And what shocked me the most was, as I'm talking to other Christians now, especially other pastors, and I'm saying, hey, look at this. Look what I discovered. This is really cool. We can have a money that is that's a fair and just measure, one that's built on honesty and so forth. Are you excited? And no, they don't care. And the most frustrating part is, I see churches taking on loads of debt to redo their buildings, maybe put a new roof, whatever project they're doing, and they take on all this debt. And I've been in churches before like this, and we have you give your 10% to the church or whatever, and then they say, we have this building project, can you help support this too? And so you're putting more burden on people. So the church is taking on debt, putting more burden on the people to support the debt, when the Bible says the borrower is a slave to the lender. And we have this thing called Bitcoin, where you don't need debt. And so it becomes very frustrating, because the paradigm shift hasn't occurred yet, at least in their minds. And they view Bitcoin as a speculative, number go up sort of investment. Whereas I'm looking at this from first principles, saying, no, like, look at this principally from a principled perspective. And maybe you'll see what I see. But in terms of debt, it was a real struggle for me. And But thank God for Bitcoin, because now we have a tool where we can begin to opt out of that. Even if it's slow, you have something you can move to, which is what I encourage people to do, is look, like, I mean, if you want to go all in and be hardcore, fine, but like, you don't have to. You can gradually just step by step get out of fiat and into Bitcoin.
And you talk about how Bitcoin is a way to opt out of this debt cycle. Can you talk through that?
Yeah. So again, my view of money, I think the historical view of money up until recent times has been that it arises out of the free market organically, right? And you even see this in the Bible, where you don't get too far into the Bible before it starts talking about money. And there's a specific passage that talks about Abraham, and it's a short little passage that most people will just read in passing, but if you really think about it, it's telling you some important information. It says this. It says, Abraham was rich in gold, in cattle, gold, and silver. That's the whole passage. So what the Bible's telling you is, early on, there was a man named Abraham, and he was a wealthy man. And how did he denominate his wealth? Gold, silver, and cattle. That was the denomination, the denominator of wealth in the time of Abraham. And so how did that come about? Because Abraham, we're told, left his homeland and went to another country. He left his father's house to go to another place. So obviously there's no top-down decree here, right? There's no king of the world, this kind of nomadic peoples, right? And you get little towns and villages here and there. So there's no big government telling everyone this is money. It's just people interacting and trading with one another. And and they ended up choosing gold, silver, and cattle. Why? Because in those days, those were the most useful things. And so today, in our context, how do we get out of this debt cycle thing? How do we opt out? Maybe this is too simplistic, but I really think we just opt out. We just say, nope, I don't want to use this. I want to use this. And that's it. Let the fiat system just, fade into irrelevance and use this new form of money. Because really, if you think about it, the Bitcoin network it's not reliant on money, right? Like, if there was no fiat money, the Bitcoin network would still operate, as long as there's nodes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the best plan here is to just opt out, choose Bitcoin, and leave fiat behind. Now, what happens to all that debt and stuff? I like the idea of like the debt jubilee. It's a biblical idea. Maybe you could just take the entire debt and revalue it in Bitcoin, and then we move on with Bitcoin and leave that behind. But I don't know, maybe that's too simplistic. I know there's more complexities in the system, and the problem with the solution I'm suggesting is it takes everybody to opt out. And a lot of people don't want to, right? They like this system, like we discussed earlier. They've built their life on this system. And so one way or another, though, I think the reckoning will come. Fiat has to inflate to zero. It's just sort of mathematically baked into the pie. Mm-hmm. And so we need something in order to siphon all of that debt into itself so we can move on. And Bitcoin seems like the best tool for that. I mean, some will say gold. I'm not a hater of gold, okay, by any means, but gold already has shown its vulnerabilities, right? People will centralize it again, like they did the last time, and they will, offer. You got guys like Peter Schiff saying, I'm going to create a gold-backed crypto, right? Okay, that's fine. I mean, Tether already did it. There's already gold-backed cryptos. But that's not solving the problem of centralization, right?
And it's not using gold as money.
Right. And so it's like, you can do that, and it serves some purpose, and I guess it's convenient if you trust the custodian. But again, you have to trust the custodian. Mm-hmm. And the whole reason we're in the mess we're in is because of trusting a custodian.
Yes.
That's the whole reason.
Yes. I agree in that sense. I also don't have anything against gold, but it failed as money because it got replaced by fiat money, right? The incentive was bigger to replace it by fiat money than to keep gold as money. And just looking at characteristics, I think Bitcoin is superior on all characteristics, basically. And I kind of, it's funny, like I've talked a lot about how Bitcoin is a spiritual thing. And I think this conversation has gave me new insights into things I thought already, but from a different angle. So thank you for that. In the Reformation, it was like the priest was removed between the man and God, and Bitcoin removes the banker between man and value or money. So does that make self-custody like a spiritual discipline, like truly owning your wealth and doing the work and having the anxiety and being afraid and needing to do the security and all this? Do you know what I mean? Like taking real ownership instead of outsourcing again another part of your life, arguably the most important tool that you can use in the physical life.
So I find this fascinating because you're describing self-custody in this sort of like spiritual way where you're taking responsibility and almost like you're regaining something that was lost, like some ancient practice that we offloaded to somebody else, right? And the reason I find it fascinating is because this is just a basic thing of life. Like the Bible has always said money is not a neutral thing, that it's a spiritual practice, that it's the way you use money, the money you use, it's deeply, deeply spiritual. And the Bible's always maintained that. This is why God has told us so much about money, right? I mean, if it wasn't a spiritual issue, God wouldn't bother with it. But in the 10 Commandments itself, we have, you shall not steal. Like that's one of the 10, that's the top 10, right? That's one of them. That's significant when you think about it. And so something you said earlier reminded me of a perspective that I have, is that when you take control and self-custody of your money, what you're essentially doing is you're agreeing with God in saying, I am made in your image. I can own and create real things. Does that make sense? I know that's very basic. But today in our culture, we have people who believe, well, you shouldn't own anything, that it should all be owned by the state or socialists or something like that. You shall not steal in its simplicity is presupposing something. You can own things. If you shall not steal, then therefore, doesn't that presuppose that you can really own things? Because how can I steal something from you if you don't really own it?
Yeah, so property.
Right. Property is a spiritual, divine gift from God. We can't. That was the mandate. Be fruitful, multiply, have dominion of. What do you think having dominion means? It means owning.
Ownership. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Real ownership, not some kind of like, socialist type of thing where sure you own it as long as you pay your taxes or something, right? You really own it. It's not. It's not like an abstract thought. It's like, no, this is mine, and I can do with it what I want. I could give it to you. I could give it to, and I could keep it. I could throw it away. Whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's a really important. That's a really important idea. That's so basic, right? It's like I almost feel silly saying it. Like, oh yeah, you can own things. It's like, well, duh. Well, not really, because today it's that those lines have been blurred. Well, what is ownership? Like, do I own my house? Because what happens if I don't pay my taxes? Well, if I don't pay long enough, they'll come with guns and drag me out, right? And then they'll put a sign on the door saying the city owns it now. They're taking it. Why? Because I didn't pay taxes. So that's not ownership. That's a rental agreement. A rental agreement's a nice way. That's slavery, basically. That's slavery. Slavery is when others own the means of your production. And I think that's the most basic.
Or the fruit of your labor, then, right?
Yeah. So if they own your labor and they own the fruit of your labor,
yeah,
because they own your labor because they take your money, right? So if you labor and make money, then they tax you. They say, okay, you've labored. Okay, well, then you owe us X amount. Well, why? I don't know, because that's what we say. Like, they just make it up. They can lower it. They can raise it, whatever. So they own your labor, and they own the means of your labor. So the stuff that your labor gets you. I don't know, man, but that doesn't sound like freedom. That sounds like slavery. Definitionally, that's slavery. But that's what we were warned. Like, even Christians get on my case. Oh, Alin, come on. It's not slavery. You're being dramatic. You're free. You can say what you want, blah, 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 blah. Okay, yeah, you're right. But just because it's like slavery light.
Like to a degree. Right. It's it's like, well, you should be okay with that because, well, you can do all these other things too. Right. But if you go down to the essence of it, this is kind of how I think. Like other people are no better than you. Right. Like who knows whatever this experience is. Right. Like who has it all figured out? It's like everyone is winging it, I always say. Right. And so why would you outsource certain elementary parts of your life to other people that have the same like human experience with their ego and their wants and needs and problems and trauma and whatever, like everything that everyone has, right? Like, why would you do that? Because they have a certain job title or are at a certain level of hierarchy. I mean, when did you agree to that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, there's no explanation for that. Sometimes I ask people, like, where did I agree to that? And then they're like, yeah, it's just because. And then I'm like, what? But I'm in an agreement with someone, with something, with some entity, right? Like, there is something that happens when I don't do something, and there's something that happens when I do something. So, like, where's that described? You know what I mean? And that I agree with you. I think that the less happy thought I have is like, wow, we're pretty far away of where we could be, actually.
Yeah. And I mean, it's your perspective, right? I mean, you could look at that and be sad about it, or you could look at that and say, oh, what a great opportunity. We can progress, we see the problem. If you don't see the problem, if you think everything's great, you're never going to strive for anything better. But if you see the problem and you see that there could be progression and there could be, you could build here and make something better, then that, for me, it's a choice. I want to look at that as an opportunity and say, okay, let's, as frustrating as it might be, trying to implement solutions, what else am I going to do? You know what I mean? I can sit around and talk about it, or I could try. And if I try and fail, that's okay. But I'm not okay with not trying. Yeah.
I think that's a great perspective. I have to think about, just like some people are drawn to the physical and other people are drawn to the spiritual. Some people are drawn to the bad, the destructive, the chaos, right? And others are attracted to the spiritual, the building, the creation, right? Like that is just the forces that are here in this world. And I mean, you cannot be positively incentivized if something negative doesn't exist. I love that thought. So I think that's what you just said, right? Like it is, you can look at what it is and then be like, okay, now I'm nihilistic. It's all going to shit. I'm going to gamble, throw my life into chaos, whatever. I cannot really do anything about it, right? Or you, maybe answer the call of creation, of building, of doing something, of trying to change something.
Maybe
right?
be who you are made to be, right? I mean, have you, if you ever get a chance, if you have a Bible, read the book of Ecclesiastes. Oh, excuse me. And you'll be depressed. You'll be depressed probably most of it until you get to the end, right? And if you understand the ending, then you're like, oh, this isn't so depressing. But, I'm sure you've heard the phrase, like vanity of vanities, all is vanity. That song that talks about there's a time to kill, there's a time to heal, there's a time to save, there's a time to spend, that. So that all comes from that book of Ecclesiastes. And in that book, you have Solomon the king, and he's old. And I love it because he's an old man, he's lived his life, and now he's basically writing a letter to his sons saying, here's what I learned. And so he goes through and he goes, so if you don't know, Solomon was the wisest king. People came from all around the world to hear his wisdom. He was the richest. Basically, Solomon lived the life everybody wants to live. Rich, handsome, lots of beautiful women, very smart, very loved by everybody, popular. He lived it. And so now he's writing to us saying, okay, here's what I learned through my life. And he goes down the list, right? He says, so the first thing I did was I tried to, I tested myself with pleasure. I had all the women and the wives and the concubines and la la la, and I found out, that was vain. That was vanity. What did it gain me? Well, so after that, I tried to be wise. So I learned, and I was the wisest, and the kings and the queens of the world came to hear me speak, and they loved me. But what did that gain me? Because I'm gonna die. What's the point? So then after that, I built the best houses, and I had all the vineyards, and I was the richest, and I had the gold, and everybody was jealous, and I had so much gold, I didn't know what to do with it. But I'm still going to die, so that's going to go to my sons, and who knows if he'll just waste it all. So what was the point? So you're reading this and you're going, man, this is depressing. Like, this guy had it all and he's depressed. This guy had it all and it was all for nothing. He's just... But then you get to the end and he says, okay, all has been heard. Here's my conclusion. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. And the book ends. Now, you might read that and go, okay, I'm still depressed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you're telling me after all of this, I should just fear God and keep his commandments, and that's the only reason I was created? Yes, but if you understand what that means, it'll uplift you. And that's exactly what we've been talking about. You can look at life and say, this sucks, that sucks. Even if I get money, even if I have women, even if I'm popular, I'm going to die, and my son will probably waste all my possessions. And you know what happened, right? Solomon's son, he did do that. He did. He was a terrible king. Or you can look at it and say, I was created for a reason and a purpose to fear God and keep his commandments. And that doesn't mean be a rigid moralist. What that means is be a builder, be a creator, be a producer, be somebody that brings value to other people, that builds something, that does something with their life. Because you can't keep the commandments of God and be, a lazy loser who plays video games all day. If you obey the commandments of God, you're going to be a productive, valuable person. And so what Solomon is saying is, despite all of that, the one thing that matters is that I just fear God and keep his commandments. This is my whole duty. My whole duty is to be a person who loves God and loves my neighbor. That's the point. Not the money, not the wisdom, not all that stuff. I mean, you might get that stuff too, but that's not the point. So when your perspective is off of the stuff and onto the substance, then you get purpose. Maybe you're still depressed. I don't know, but I'm not.
No. I love that. I think it is. I kind of, like I said, I'm not religious, but I do. When I have this Bible app, and like every day at 8 a.m, it sends me a verse, and usually when I read it, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense, And what you just said for me is kind of goes back to what we talked about in the beginning. There's like spiritual parts to this experience, and there's physical parts to this experience, right? And what you just said for me is when you align with the spiritual parts of this experience, you will also find the physical parts of this experience, right? If you focus on the physical experience, you will probably not find the spiritual part of this experience, right? And
the spiritual part gives meaning to the physical.
Exactly, yeah. And that's also why, and I want to check with you, all the sins are about the physical part of the experience, right? So if you identify too much with the physical part of the experience, that's when you fall more and more and more and more into the physical part of the experience and forget that there's also a spiritual part of the experience.
Yeah. So if your focus is on God and who you are, created by Him, I don't think it will diminish the physical, but it'll put the physical in its right place.
Yeah. I agree.
So that there's a reason why Solomon talks about all this physical stuff and how he goes, well, at the end of it was vain. It was pointless. Because he was searching he was searching in the physical for something that only the spiritual could give him. And so it didn't work. The pleasure didn't work. The money didn't work. The fame didn't work. The gold didn't work. Nothing worked. Why? Because he was looking for in the material something that only an immaterial being could give him. So that's why at the end of it he goes, this is the whole duty of man, right? Fear God and keep His commandments. Like, it's about God. It's not about you. It never was about you. It's not about the physical. And when you do focus on God, then the rest of the stuff just makes sense, and that's and gives it meaning. So why would I make money? What's the point, right? So I'm just gonna die, and maybe my son will waste it. That was pointless. He even says, I've seen a great evil under the sun. A rich man and a poor man die the same. So what was the point of being rich? Right? Yeah. Because the same dirt that covers the rich man covers the poor man. So, but when you look at the physical, it's depressing. But then when you look in terms of spiritual, it's like, no, this is a stage where I get to play out this part given to me by the eternal God, and it doesn't end here. And the beautiful thing is, we can't keep the commandments perfectly. Nobody can. We all sin. We all fall. This is part of life, unfortunately. And that's the whole reason Jesus came. And that's why that's the whole thing, is He came to show us the way, to shed His blood, to rise from the dead, to show us, man, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. If you follow me and follow my ways, there's a reason why you read the Bible and you go, oh, that makes sense, right? I'm sure you're familiar with the Lindy effect, right? That the longer something's around, the more likely it's going to be around. Well, the Bible's been around a long time, and the reason it's been around a long time is because if you actually understand it and read it and implement it, it works. It works. It works so well that you can be rich and be joyful, and you can be poor and be joyful. I mean, one of the most powerful verses in the Bible is from the Apostle Paul. He says, I have learned to be content with much and with little. When you get to that point where you're content, then the whole world just opens up to you. And that's real. I mean, people struggle their whole life for contentment, but it's right there in the Bible. It's been there the whole time. This is the way to live. And anyways, I could keep preaching, but
awesome, man. I love that. So thank you for that. To wrap up, I usually ask everyone at the end the same question, which is, what is a core belief you will never let go of? I'd love to hear yours, but maybe you can weave this in, because I feel that for you it's kind of connected. But I wanted to ask you, for people that are listening, that maybe feel spiritual but not religious, and in connection with Bitcoin, what is a shared value that really unites everything we just talked about? What is that for you? Does that make sense? How does the embracing the spiritual part of your life and embracing Bitcoin actually helps us to build something more truthful together?
Yeah. I think the shared value has to be truth. Because if you're into Bitcoin, if you believe in Bitcoin, then you by necessity have to believe in a thing called truth. You know, there's people today who say truth is like relative, right? Your truth, my truth, things like this. But Bitcoin sort of stands in the way of that and says, but I'm not relative, right? I'm true. It's math, right? Bitcoin, I like to call it the truth machine, because it's this protocol that is just true. That's all it does. It's just all it does is true things. It doesn't do fraudulent, lying things. It just does truth in its sphere, right? I mean, there's other truths, but Bitcoin, in the closed Bitcoin system, it just does truth.
Yes.
So if that's true, and it is, then you have to ask yourself the question: what else is true? Is there a foundational truth upon which the rest is built? And so that's my number one core value. I think that was the question you asked, right? What's your number one core value? Is this searching and embracing of truth. And for me, where the rubber met the road was because I investigated religion, and people who say they're spiritual but not religious, all I hear when I hear that is I'm religious in a different way. No offense to anybody, but it's like, look, everyone has their own ideology, their own. So it's like, I'm not spiritual, I'm religious. Well, you're just religiously different than me, maybe. That's all that means. And so for me, I looked at it all, right? I looked at the New Age stuff. I looked at Islam. I looked at Buddhism. I looked at, what else did I look at? Hinduism and so forth. I looked at these religions. And I discovered that a lot of them talk about Jesus. And I was like, why does everybody want Jesus for themselves? Like Islam says about Jesus, and a lot of New Age people quote Jesus. And why does everybody want Jesus for themselves? Who is Jesus? And for me, it was this, the claim that Jesus rose from the dead. I said, in my mind, I reasoned, if that happened, then everything Jesus says is true. Because who else rose from the dead, right? I mean, at the end of the day, Solomon is saying, I'm just going to die. And most of us say that too. Well, I'm just going to die in the end, so who cares? But what if somebody came who defeated death? Then we could trust what he says, right? Because he was there and he defeated death. And so I needed to know, is it true? Did he rise from the dead? Did this happen? And through my research and study, I discovered that I could not, honestly, to this day, I cannot find a better explanation for the facts of history other than, oh my goodness, he actually did rise from the dead. And so that has been my journey, and my relationship with truth is kind of boiling it down to that one event. If he's alive, everything he says is true. I found it. I don't need to continue searching. This is it. And I discovered I can't answer it any other way other than he did. And so that's my core value, is truth. And in truth, I found Jesus to be the embodiment of it.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks so much for sharing. Thanks so much for your time. You definitely opened my mind and seeing the things I thought about Bitcoin and money and all these things we talked about in a different way. So very valuable. So thank you. And hope to stay in touch. And I hope others find it valuable too, man. So thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you. Grace and peace.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, you can click here to find more just like it, and click here to find all Bitcoin for Millennials podcast episodes. Also, please like this video if you want to help shine a light on the message of Bitcoin, and subscribe to my channel to stay connected. I hope to see you for a next episode. Bye.